Minority communities, the poor, undocumented immigrants, the elderly, and people with physical and mental disabilities are more likely to be vulnerable to climate change and environmental hazards. In an effort to characterize and locate populations vulnerable to climate change in New Jersey, a team of researchers at Rutgers University conducted a quantitative study to examine the demographic and geographic attributes of socially vulnerable groups and their relation to flooding as an environmental hazard associated with the changing climate. Vulnerability has been described as the potential for loss. It is often characterized by exposure, sensitivity, and the capacity to respond or recover from shocks or stressors. Social vulnerability focuses on the vulnerability of a person or social group and the factors that contribute to this vulnerability. Such factors include age, ethnicity and race, gender, physical ability and health, socioeconomic status, occupation, access to knowledge and information, and location. These characteristics help explain why various groups experience the impact from a hazard event differently even when exposure levels are similar. These characteristics typically overlap to form heightened levels of vulnerability within a population. For example, older, disabled, and poor people are often more vulnerable than others, although research shows that these same groups include people most prepared for hazard events and those who help their neighbors. Using a tool known as the Social Vulnerability Index, the researchers conducted a statistical analysis indicating that social vulnerability in New Jersey could be attributed to 6 factors, of which 4 were deemed significant. 1. Race, family structure, and low socioeconomic status. 2. Linguistic isolation, ethnicity, high population density, and low socioeconomic status. 3. Age. And 4. Unoccupied housing. These factors are in no way a definitive list of the populations vulnerable to climate change in New Jersey. But this statistical analysis provides an idea of the characteristics or overlapping vulnerabilities within these groups and their locations throughout the state. The researchers found that 15% of all census tracts in New Jersey are classified as areas of high social vulnerability, or areas that display 2 or more of the significant factors. These tracts are located in urban areas, the rural South, and in coastal areas frequently impacted by storm events. Comparing these tracts with FEMA flood maps shows that there are a disproportionate amount of socially vulnerable tracts located in high flood risk areas. Of the 278 high social vulnerability census tracts in the state for which floodplain data was available, 69%, or 193, lie within the FEMA-designated 100-year floodplain. These census tracts represent a total population of 677,771 people and an average population density of 9,574 people per square mile. If the 500-year floodplain is included, the number of socially vulnerable census tracts increases to 206, or 74%. These census tracts represent a total population of 724,156 people, with an average population density of 9,596 people per square mile. These estimates provide insight into the demographic characteristics of vulnerable areas, but it's important to note that not all persons residing in these areas or captured in these estimates are vulnerable. Counties with the highest percentage of vulnerable tracts within the floodplain were located in densely populated urban areas, particularly Hudson, Essex, and Passaic counties, and along the coast, such as Ocean and Atlantic counties. Scientists studying climate change in New Jersey expect the state to experience rising sea levels, a greater magnitude of storm surge, higher temperatures, and increased occurrences of heavy precipitation. Flooding and other disruptions threaten the livelihood of vulnerable populations and exacerbate daily stressors. This study is a snapshot of the compounding vulnerabilities prevalent in populations at risk of flood hazards associated with climate change. A disproportionate share of the most socially vulnerable residents of New Jersey live along the urban corridor, along the coast, and in certain rural areas. Notably, these are also areas vulnerable to flooding. Statistical analyses can only take risk managers part of the way toward making important choices. Practitioners, stakeholders, and decision makers working in emergency management and hazard mitigation have critical insights about the vulnerabilities present within their communities. Although there is a vast amount of public data and online mapping tools, resources are needed to help build capacity to interpret maps and create plans to address local vulnerabilities. Communities need support to assess their hazard profiles so strategies to address vulnerabilities can be incorporated into local planning documents.